Bond, James Bond, woke, get woke. Now available in paperback and coming to Kindle Unlimited. John Haynes, Dark Succubus. The man who rules the world is tempted by a sultry succubus in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Dark Succubus in paperback or pre-order on Kindle Unlimited today. The James Bond franchise is the latest franchise to get woke, and in a recent announcement, it was stated that the new 007 would be portrayed by Lashana Lynch, a black woman. Now, the producers of this Bond 25 say that they wanted to cast James Bond's 007 as a black woman because they were doing it in the name of diversity. However, many don't see how this casting really is an insult to black women, and they don't see how it is an insult to black men. Because in order to understand how this casting insults people, you have to understand the paternalistic view of the far leftists, aka the SJW, and how their attempts to go woke show how racist they actually are. Now, when it comes down to this casting of Lashana Lynch, on the outside it appears to be so progressive. But when you take a critical examination of this casting, you can see how racist it truly is. Now, many are in Hollywood and many fans of James Bond talked about how your Idris Elba would be a better fit for a role in the franchise. And some even wanted to see him portray James Bond in a movie. However, with this casting, what these SJWs were trying to do was throw a middle finger up at all of those fans who wanted Idris Elba in the role, and they wanted to passive-aggressively take a shot at black women. Now, passively, this casting of this Lashana Lynch on the surface appears to be an effort to make a step towards diversity. However, when you take a look at the aggressive approach to it, what they're doing is sending a message to black women that they have absolutely no respect for the black woman and that they see the black woman as masculine. Because when you take a critical examination of what James Bond is all about, your James Bond, as originally designed by Ian Fleming, was supposed to be this ultimate alpha male. And as the ultimate alpha male, he was supposed to be this man who was supposed to be very strong, very confident, very dashing, and very charming. And he was supposed to be so extremely handsome that women literally fell at his feet. So basically what they're trying to say about Lashana Lynch as 007 is that a black woman is just like a man. And that is the backhanded slap being sent to black women. However, many black women are so completely clueless to how they are being insulted that they don't see how little respect these so-called SJWs have for them by casting her in this role. Because when you look at this image of Lashana Lynch and what they're trying to portray, they are basically saying that the black woman is a masculine woman. And in some reports, there are plans to actually put this Lashana Lynch in a safari suit similar to what Roger Moore wore back in his days as James Bond, further looking like they're trying to masculinize the black female image, and furthermore trying to degrade the black female image in a passive-aggressive fashion. So instead of casting Idris Elba in the role of this Bond 25, what these feminists are trying to do is take a backhanded slap at black women, all in the name of so-called diversity. Now, in this campaign to push this so-called diversity, we have these feminists who are writing the James Bond movie and producing it, talking about how they want to humanize Bond girls. one of the most ridiculous things I have ever heard in my life. Now, when it comes down to James Bond is not designed to be humanized. James Bond is not meant to be some sort of statement on humanity. James Bond is pure escapist entertainment. That is what Ian Fleming originally designed in his James Bond movies, and his James Bond movies were a lot like the old school pulp fictions of Mickey Spillane's Mike Hammer or your Doc Savage back in the days of the 1930s. It was supposed to be a fantasy world filled with exaggeration, filled with imagination, and nothing in a James Bond movie is meant to be real. But your feminists, because they have no imagination, want to try to transpose their ideas onto this 007 franchise, and what they want to do is use a technicality to transpose their ideas and project their feminist politics into this fantasy world where you have your James Bond, a spy who has all of the spy gadgets and all of these fantastic adventures. They want to inject reality into the fantasy, sucking all of the fun out of the fantasy. Now, this technicality that your feminists want to use to introduce their so-called black female 007 is by using the number 007 as the way to transition from the fantasy of the real James Bond to their feminist replacement. And what they want to do is say that James Bond decided to retire from his work as doing a spy, and then the number 007 is retired and then given to another agent, which is this Lashana Lynch character who is going to be looking like a man, dressing like a man, and probably acting like a man from some of the things I have read, where she rebuffs your James Bond's advances. And I'm looking at all of this, and it clearly shows me, again, that the producers of this film, the screenwriter, clearly do not understand the concept of James Bond. Because what I see what they're trying to do is the exact same thing that they tried to do with Thor over at Marvel Comics, where they decided that Thor was not Odin's, the name Odin gave his son, but is actually what the power you get when you pick up the hammer. And in that Thor comic book, they decided that Jane Foster, the nurse, could be Thor because she picks up the hammer and she gets the power because she could pick up the hammer. And that runs completely counter to what the mythology is all about as related to the Thor comic book, and even to the Norse mythology, where your Thor was a white male. And he was a white male because that is part of Norse mythology, just like James Bond from Ian Fleming was originally designed to be a British white male. And 007 was his code name, and that was the code name given to him as a British white male. However, your feminist and social justice warriors, because they can't create their own character and don't want to really create any character as related to diversity, they decide to take James Bond's name and his code name 007 and transpose it onto this black female in the name of diversity, and all to push their feminist identity politics inside of the Bond franchise in an attempt to show how woke the James Bond franchise should be. However, when I take a critical examination of James Bond, I do not see an appropriate place for showing how woke you are. When it comes down to James Bond is a man's man. He is the ultimate image of hyper-masculinity, and he is a fantasy character designed for people to get an escape from. He is designed to take people away from their problems, show how this superhuman almost man overcomes the greatest of obstacles, shows how creative and resourceful he is, and shows how he can overcome the greatest challenges while saving the world and getting the hottest and sexiest women. He's designed to be a male fantasy, and what your feminists want to do is emasculate James Bond by saying that, oh, James Bond is too old, he has to retire, and in order for us to keep the legacy going on, we have to bring in some black female to take her place. A insult at black women by saying that your black woman is just like a man. And most black people, this will go all over their heads because they are so busy feeling about James Bond. And so many black women, they are so in their feelings about your Lashana Lynch being James Bond. And they're all dreaming about your Lashana Lynch picking up and having sexual relations with white men, because that's what most black women really want from this Bond 25 movie, is to see this strong, independent black woman deifying and worshipping white men and getting herself in bed with numerous white men. Again, another insult directed at the black woman, basically calling her a hoe directly to her face, because that's what your James Bond would be to many people, a whoremonger, but that's far for the character because he got with many, many women over the course of over 24 movies. But your black woman will never see what is being directed at her, the insult being directed at her by these white feminist SJWs who all want to talk and show how woke they are, but in actuality show the world how racist they actually are by presenting your Lashana Lynch in this role. And this does not really bode well for the film because your Lashana Lynch was a part of 2019's Captain Marvel, playing the Rambeau woman in that movie, which was nothing more than a woke feminist fest which promoted the idea of strong women but didn't only give us anything of value overall. And that's what we're going to get from this Bond movie written by feminists, a film designed to emasculate James Bond, designed to emasculate British men, and designed to destroy a British male icon in the worst fashion. So when I look at this film, it is a complete insult not only to black men, black women, and British men. It is also a complete slap in the face to many who have been watching this Bond franchise since the 60s and were looking to see a strong image of British masculinity, British manhood, and instead of them getting that image of British manhood and masculinity in an action-packed spy adventure, what we're going to get is a movie that shows how woke Hollywood is by promoting the idea of a British woman in the role of James Bond's 007, a British woman who is going to be playing the role of a man, and again, another insult directed at black women by saying they're just like men, and it's a passive-aggressive jab because passively, again, they show you a black woman pushing diversity, but aggressively, these white women push the joke that the black woman is just like a man, but you can't explain this to them because they're deifying and worshipping white men and believing that this movie will be showing this Lashana Lynch getting with white men, and that's supposed to be the hook to bring people in. But when I take a further critical examination of this attempt to show how woke they are, I see this Bond 25 going broke, just like Ghostbusters 2016, your Ocean's 8, and many other films like your Atomic Blonde and many others, which was supposed to design the whole idea of a strong heroine. However, when I look at this whole idea of a strong heroine, it really is weak, and the reason it is weak is because when it comes down to it, when you think about it, why do you need to go into a man's franchise to show how strong a woman you are? If you're so strong, why don't you go out here, write your own screenplay, and cast your own actress in her own role, and let her star in her own movie. I mean, if I, a author of heroines like Isis and Eastine and Matilda Crowley, can go out here and create heroines and have them in their own stories on my SJS Direct imprint, why can't these SJWs go out of their way to create their own heroines, find their own financing, create their own movie, and let that character carry their own franchise? Well, the answer to that is easy. Most of these SJWs and feminists are cowards, and because they don't have the backbone, grit, and integrity to go out here and create their own characters and push their own concepts, and they don't have any confidence in their concepts, what they do is go out here and push outrage culture, getting outraged at the whole idea of James Bond being a masculine man, and shame people into casting your Lashana Lynch as James Bond. And what they do is insult black women by putting this masculine-looking black female in the role. And they say that they're doing this all in the name of being progressive, but in actuality, it's the same old racism repackaged in a brand new box. And sadly, most black women can't see the joke being pointed at them by these SJWs, who are nothing more than, again, cowards who don't have the courage to go out here and push their own concepts like I do. No, these women and men have no backbone and no stones, and they don't have any of the fortitude, character, or resolve of a James Bond, because at least, as much as they call your James Bond a misogynist and a sexist, at least James Bond can stand on his own 2 feet. He is his own character, and he has his own mission. That's something your SJWs and your feminists just don't have. All they know how to do is bully and shame people, and all they know how to do is try to talk about how woke they are, and in actuality, all they do is show you how racist they are. So when I look at your Bond 25, I see the film that could be the nail in the coffin for the franchise, because after Bond 25, this franchise just won't be alive. Because there is no hope. When people get woke, they just go broke.
Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. Isis, All That Glitters. The goddess next door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed, all-new Isis series adventure. Get Isis, All That Glitters in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today.